This is a piece of the story of a fisherman who hunts fish using a spear. His skill in playing the spear is a legacy from his ancestors that has been passed down from generation to generation. And with Lieutenant Banana Channel for the next 8 minutes we'll tell it briefly. This story begins with a traditional fisherman who walks along the edge of a muddy pond after it rains. Carrying a traditional tool in the form of an iron spear with many tips, he hunts fish in a small pond that is still flooded with water. After several attempts, his spear finally hits its target. A large snakehead fish appears to be bitten hard by the tip of the spear, trying to escape but failing. The light of the flashlight shines on the fish's slippery body, showing its shiny scales and its muscular body unable to avoid the spear throw. This catch is not just luck, but also the result of persistence and night hunting skills that have been passed down from generation to generation.
Wow. Yo.
After the fish were put into the sack he was carrying, the fisherman continued his steps along each side of the pond. It was clear that there were many large red fish, but they were not allowed to be taken because they were pet fish. With alert eyes, sensitive ears, and hands ready to swing the spear again if there was any suspicious movement on the surface of the water. It didn't take long for the fisherman to throw his spear again for the second time. Boom, the sound of the spear was quite loud, the water that was previously calm became rippling. The fish he was targeting fought back with all his might, but it was in vain for the fish. His spear hit the target very precisely. The fisherman then put the fish back into the sack he was carrying. Look closely, I told you the spear landed perfectly every point gripping the fish. So it is impossible for the fish to escape. Sometimes the fisherman also has difficulty releasing his spear.
Wow. Yo.
In the middle of his night hunt, the atmosphere became quieter. A thin mist began to descend, covering the wetlands and weeds around the small ditch. The sounds of crickets and frogs calling to each other became a natural background that accompanied the angler's careful steps. In his hand, a sharp-tipped spear was tightly gripped, ready to be used at any time. Every now and then he paused, looking down, watching the faint movement on the surface of the water. A fish seemed to be slowly settling. Without hesitation, he thrust his spear again with a quick and precise movement. Boom, the sound of the spear was heard softly but surely. The water was not too deep and did not splash, and his hand felt the strong pull of the fish that was caught. He knew this time his catch was no ordinary catch. A large snakehead fish was trying to free itself. Carefully, he lifted his spear, showing his catch that was wriggling strongly. A slight smile appeared on his face. Hard work and patience began to pay off.
Wow.
This time he had to take a different route, a path that led through an old cemetery on the outskirts of the village. Many villagers were reluctant to pass through the area because of the haunted stories that had been passed down through the generations, but for the fisherman, family was more important than fear. With his spear and flashlight in hand, he walked slowly past the dew-covered gravestones. There was no sound except his footsteps and the wind blowing through the trees. His destination was a small ditch hidden behind the cemetery, a place he knew tilapia often gathered when the tide was low. Once there, his rough, practiced hands began to dive slowly into the murky water, feeling the bottom carefully. Without his spear, he relied only on instinct and his composure.
Wow.
Every now and then he hissed softly, turning his gaze to the shadows behind the trees, but he did not waver. When he finally caught a sizable tilapia, a small smile spread across his old face.
Next.
After some time exploring the ditches and small channels, and successfully catching several tilapia, the night grew late. The air grew colder, and dew began to wet the leaves around him. The sack he was carrying now began to feel heavy, containing the results of his hard work hunting patiently and attentively. For a moment he stared at the star-studded night sky, then took a deep breath. There was such satisfaction in every step he took that night that he didn't realize he had found his target fish in a ready position. He used the spear again. He stabbed it with great precision. Boom! The sound of the explosion from his spear immediately broke the silence of the silent night. One explosion sent him to the fish he was targeting. Once again, he managed to stab his target fish perfectly.
Wow.
With a slightly gasping breath due to tension and excitement, the fisherman kept holding the handle of the spear tightly. He knew that soon there would be a pond containing a very large snakehead fish. This was not easy to spear because of its agility. Slowly, he let go and walked. Immediately the spear was thrown without any prior warning. The sound
Wow.
blended with the sound of the
Mantap.
rushing river water beside it. Although its movement was fast, the fish could not avoid the fisherman's spear. The fish managed to climb to land but still had time to escape. The fisherman immediately approached it, took it and put it in a sack that was already quite full.
Whoa. Yo. Yo.
The fisherman returned to explore the small ditch slowly but surely. He knew that at the end of this ditch there was a fairly large pond. Arriving at the pond, he immediately positioned himself in the right place. If he was careless for the slightest bit, the fish could escape. And the boom, the sound of the spear exploding was heard again. With high precision, speed and accuracy, his spear was very
Wow.
skilled. One spear, one explosion and one fish always succeeded. This night was truly very friendly.
Wow.
Where in the darkness it had given him
Mantap
space to be able
sekali.
to see and catch
Whoa.
fish.
Yo, mantap.
After one by one the fish were successfully caught and it was deemed sufficient. The fisherman went home. Although the night was still long and there were still many fish to be caught, the fisherman took enough. He knew that preserving nature and its ecosystem was more valuable for the future, so that it can be enjoyed by his children and grandchildren. And that's the story of this fisherman until here. We, Let Jen Banana channel would like to thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
Wow.